to you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. So it almost seems kind of strange to be back in this building for worship today. It's kind of weird. With the past few Sundays, we've been on the road. So actually, I don't know if y'all all know this, but last Sunday we were one congregation in two different places. I made the observation where one of us was, that one of the great strengths of this church is that we're about as flexible as you can be. And I want to repeat that observation this morning for those of you who didn't hear last week. If we're not able to meet in our usual spot, we're really good at adapting. And even with just a couple of days' notice. And we're really good at finding a way to come together to say our prayers and to praise God. It's almost like we're a family, a church family that wants to be together. How wild is that? What a radical concept. And it's no matter what. Now I don't want to downplay the stresses and the anxieties that go with having to sort of pinch hit all the time. But I do think it worth pointing out that I've actually had some fun with all the sort of creativity involved in having to come up with where do we do church, how do we do church. So that's kind of cool. And actually, this is not something that's old hat, or no, new hat. Sorry, it is old hat. Last year, because of a hurricane, we were actually in Pete and Julie Hearn's backyard, and that was fun. I think that was an enjoyable time. And this year, this last Sunday, we were in two different places at the same time. One was the Hut Chapel in Conway. The other was Dan and Jennifer Ennis' home. The Sunday before that, we were at my house. So, as I said, we're all over the place. So we're really, really good at this, which I think is kind of cool. All of this sort of reminds me of that line from Fiddler on the Roof. I know we're the chosen people, but every once in a while, I wish that you'd choose someone else. So anyway, I hope that you're all saying your prayers for a quiet remainder of the hurricane season. Again, I know that everything that has happened over the past several weeks has been really stressful. So I really do hope that this morning can be a time of relaxation. And I kind of hope that we can have some fun together. And conventional wisdom suggests that in the wake of a major disaster, the best thing that we can do is to return to a sense of regularity. I heard the choir practice this past Wednesday was a blessing to a lot of people who were just thankful to get back to a sense of routine, a sense of the normal. And I know that at least some Coastal Carolina students are really looking forward to being back in class. It's hard to believe. There is comfort in routine. But this morning, I would like us to take a look at the gospel lesson in a little bit of an irregular way. I think that it's fair to say that the gospel lesson from this morning is pretty serious, right? It's all about taking our responsibility as Christians seriously and appreciating the importance of being faithful as if there's something really at stake. And Jesus' words are severe, to say the least. And that's all good and true. I think that what he's saying is worth pointing out. We certainly should be deeply concerned about how our actions reflect who we are and who we claim to be. And woe to us if we put stumbling blocks in the way of anyone who is trying to love God and be loved by God. But sometimes seriousness and severity can get in the way of what the gospel is, especially in the wake of disaster. And what I mean is this: we all seem to have a millstone hung around our necks at the moment. If you take a stroll around Conway right now, things just seem deadly serious. There are barricades everywhere, there are military vehicles on every corner, and the floodwaters are still standing there as a reminder that lives across the city and across the county, across 2 states, have been devastated by what's happening. We're up to our eyes in seriousness. You can see it on people's faces. discount anyone's determination to carry on in the face of disaster, or anyone's frustration at the disruption of their lives, or anyone's sadness at having lost all of their possessions. What I mean to say is, there's more than enough seriousness in the air to go around right now. So my hope is that coming together in the presence of God this morning might offer us a bit of holy levity. Because there are times that I think that lightheartedness is what can help get us over life's stumbling blocks. I'll give you an example of what I mean. A few days after the storm, when the waters really started to rise, I seriously and deliberately set out on my bicycle to get a sense of what the flooding was going to look like. And it was a very sobering ride, especially as I rode down Laurel Street and saw how high the water had already risen. I noticed that there were sort of groups of police and National Guard troops stationed at several points near the water. So I decided to stop and talk to a group of officers just to sort of see how their spirits were. And we spoke briefly about how things were going and how they were holding up under the heat and the stress. And then one of them said, well, sometimes all you can do is laugh. I mean, look at that guy. And he pointed down to the water where, about 100 yards from where we stood, there was a man sitting on a bench with a fishing pole. And the bench was actually in the water. This guy was sitting on the bench with the water up to his knees. And the officer said, he's fine, he's not in any danger. And he'd been there all morning and seemed perfectly content. And I remember thinking to myself, that guy must have a few screws loose. And that may well have been true. But then again, I thought, he might just be trying to have a little bit of lighthearted fun in the face of disaster. And I don't think that he was being a stumbling block to anyone, at least, judging from the officer's reaction. But he certainly provided the officers with something to smile about, which in that context and in that situation was a real gift. So it might be the case that that guy was being something of a holy fool. And I want to suggest that we might take a lesson from that kind of lighthearted foolishness. If we're supposed to be deadly serious about not being a stumbling block to others or ourselves, then at times such as this, the best way not to be a stumbling block is to laugh. To laugh together. To share with each other. To enjoy being the church together. So here's what I'm going to encourage us all to do over the next few weeks. Call each other up. Invite each other over for a visit. Doesn't need to be anything fancy or formal, just touch base with one another and find out what's going on. Every one of us is going to have a story to share, whether it be about a guy fishing on a park bench in floodwater or about being stuck in traffic for several hours. As you share those stories, I am absolutely certain that you will hear notes of God's grace in action. And it's okay to laugh at the sometimes apparently silly ways that God's grace can make itself known to us. At times like this, I think we all do well to relax and find a bit of joy, because I do think that that's going to help us to deal with the seriousness of helping others and putting lives back together. And don't worry, in the weeks to come, I will be issuing calls for volunteers to help with the relief effort. And I want you to know that I am, again, certain that everyone here, from toddlers to nonagenarians, have work that they can do to help the relief effort. But the initial work begins today. And your assignment, should you choose to accept it, is to find some space for some lighthearted and holy joy.
Amen.